Hey guys, what's going on? This is Muffin Supreme, and if you could tell by my hoodie, I'm a big fan of just not Metallica, but metal music in general, the classic and a lot of the modern and everything in between. Big fan of a whole bunch of different genres, and if I wanted to list all my favorites from all the different genres, we'd be here all day. But I was thinking about something because music is very sentimental. Makes you go through a lot of emotions, whether that be good or bad, and it helps you heal through a lot of emotional times too. And I'm thinking about the four pillars of metal that really stuck in my craw, that also just kind of like helped me get through the time, like hard times and whatnot. And like I said, I could be here all day if I named all the bands that I loved. But these particular four bands, these four pillars as I'm going to refer to them, are bands that always stuck with me emotionally, and that when I look back on certain points in my life, they're the ones that were there. Not necessarily saying that these are like the greatest bands of all time, even though I think they're up there in my list. So like talking about bands like Black Sabbath, Alice Cooper, Motorhead, all these bands, these classic bands that I love, they're not on this pillar list because I discovered them later on after I love these that I'm going to be discussing. So, but I appreciate them. But there's four bands out there that I want to talk about today that really shaped my young adult life and have shaped me into who I am today, and is music that I consistently listen to all the time. And so yeah, in the comments section, or however you want to do it, let me know the pillar bands that you like. What are your four pillars of metal that keep you going and make you love this music even more? So let's go ahead, and in no particular order, but since it's on my hoodie, I'll address it first because I've stated many a times Metallica is most likely my most favorite band of all time. They're the top number one. I've seen them 3 times, and I loved every single time I've seen them. And I label them as probably my number one band because of their significance. And to understand that, I'll have to go into a little context. I've been a lover of all music my whole life. In fact, a lot of the music I listened to growing up in the car from my mother was stuff like Motley Crue, Guns N' Roses. These were bands that I was introduced to by riding in the car with my mom. And of course, my mom grew up in the 80s hair metal days, so I feel like genetically I've inherited my love for that genre of music from her, because I listened to her. I was in the womb. You know, they say Einstein, you listen to Einstein music or classical music in your mother's wound, you'll grow up loving classical music. But listening to stuff like Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, to Pink, or the Baha Men, Who Let the Dogs Out, that was a thing, right? But stuff like that, I was pretty much exposed to different types of music. But there was a time as I got older, I was more into classic 90s, late 80s country, and a lot of more country rockish, southern rockish. I was really big into Lynyrd Skynyrd, Stevie Ray Vaughan. The Allman Brothers. There's a lot of different like more contemporary, like it was a step up from country as far as like the level of rockness, if that's a term I could use correctly. Probably fudge that one up. But anyway, because of all that, when I got into like 8th grade, I was really into my country boy phase. Now it didn't help matters much that during that time, the school I went to, it was a rural area, so there was a lot of guys that wore jeans and boots and Fisher hats and camo and all that stuff, and they were into just the country life, listening to country music, some rock and roll here and there, but for the most part I was trying to fit in. So I was all about Lynyrd Skynyrd, which I genuinely like Lynyrd Skynyrd, but that only helped the matters much. I was already a fan of them. I was like, oh yeah, country music. I hate rock and roll. Rock and roll's stupid, blah, blah, blah. But I still like Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses. I was self-admittedly trying to fit in. So fast forward, I think it was Christmas of 2005-ish, or 2004-ish. It was right around the cusp of that time. For Christmas, my mother got me the Black Album, and that was it. Everything changed because of that. I fell in love with that album. That was my first full-on introduction to Metallica, And because of that, I became a super fan. So much to the point that it made me go back and listen to their older stuff, which, as I'm an adult now, well, I wasn't more of an adult, but now I appreciate and I love the older stuff just a little bit more than the more contemporary stuff. And what I mean by that is I'm more of a fan of the pre-Black Album than I am the post-Black Album, because they really got me into thrash like that. And I know some people, some purists, some thrash purists out there, they don't really look too fondly on Metallica sometimes, but Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, those two albums, Kill 'Em All, and then Injustice for All, those four albums are just balls to the wall, and I love them. And I really love it. Ride the Lightning is my favorite Metallica album, just in case you were curious. But yeah, Metallica has been with me ever since then. When I was in a garage band with my buddies, I tended to write lyrics in the style that James Hetfield would write them. I liked the way he would write words, and it influenced me. When we would come up with music, a lot of their styles and riffages just played in my head, and I always leaned towards their style. It was so, I can't explain it, but they had a very big influence on me. And in 2009, I got to see them for the first time, and I was loving it. And then I saw them in 2019, so it was like 10 years later. And then 2024 in Chicago, we saw them for the Hardwired tour. Saw them 3 times, and all 3 times were such an amazing show, and I loved every bit of it. And they've just remained a testament to my musical love. So got to give a shout out to Metallica there. Metallica, yeah! The next band I would like to talk about is Avenged Sevenfold. Now, I've seen Avenged Sevenfold 3 times, so they're right there tied with Metallica as far as number of live performances I've seen. And my love for Avenged Sevenfold really started, because of Guitar Hero. Guitar Hero 2, I believe, had the track Beast and the Harlot, which was a banger. It's still one of my favorite songs of all time. It's my favorite Avenged Sevenfold song of all time, if we're being frank. And it all kind of came together in the year 2007. A lot of people say, oh, my summer of 69. Well, no, 2007 was my summer of 69. That summer is a summer I'll never forget. All the fun things I did. I hung out with my buddy Alec, and we hung out with all these different people. I had one of my first big crushes over the summer. Got introduced to more Guitar Hero stuff. Played the living hell out of Guitar Hero all summer. Got into Ozzy Osbourne. That was the year I got into Crazy Train. It was a Crazy Train ride. That was like the theme of the theme song of that summer was Crazy Train, but I digress. But listening to Beast and the Harlot, it really got me into Avenged Sevenfold. And I remember listening to that song constantly over and over again. And I eventually got really into the band. And then in 2009, the same year I saw Metallica, I saw Avenged Sevenfold for the first time. And then I saw them 2 years later during the Nightmare tour. And I saw a guy jump from the top of the ceiling at the start of Nightmare, pretending like he was being, that word, hung. And then I saw them in 2017 when they were promoting The Stage. And all their songs were just great to me and during that period. City of Evil, such a great album. It partially carried me through high school. I remember listening to them all the time on the bus and then with my friends at parties. That's, like I said, that summer of 2007 was really huge. Beast and the Harlot was a song I constantly was playing. So I really, really love them. And I have to admit, haven't really been listening to a lot of their newer stuff. They've definitely been messing with some different genres, which is commendable. More power to them. And it's okay that it's not my thing. That's fine, because that's just how it is. I can't say that I love their new stuff, but I'm not going to knock it either, because that's what an artist does. An artist will do what they feel they need to do creatively. But I still have fond memories of their earlier album. Their 2009 self-titled album is great. Little Piece of Heaven is such a fun song. It's depraved, but it's such a fun song. Gunslinger is like one of my favorite underrated gems of theirs. It's one of my top 5 favorite Avenged Sevenfold songs. But they just shaped my teenage, early adult life. So had to throw them on there. And the last 2 I'm saving because they kind of go hand in hand. if it wasn't for Metallica, these two bands would probably be fighting for my favorite band of all time. And I wish I could say I've seen all these bands live. There's only one that I haven't. And the last two I'm going to talk about, I have seen one live. And I'll explain more into that. But so we're going to be talking about Bullet for My Valentine and then Killswitch Engage. And I want to preface this by saying I'm talking about the Howard Jones-led Killswitch Engage, because I got into Killswitch Engage after Jesse left the band. So my introduction to Killswitch Engage was with Howard. And the reason I heard them was one of my favorite wrestlers, still is, but at the time CM Punk was using This Fire Burns, which I really like that song because they played it constantly on the wrestling show I watched. So I really like that song. So my buddy Alec, actually, I was telling him about the song, and he said, well, I have the album that it came on. So End of Heartache, that album. And I listened to that album. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. That song, you want to talk about Avenged Sevenfold being the soundtrack of my high school days. The End of Heartache is probably one of my top 5, maybe top 3 favorite metal albums of all time. End of Heartache is such an amazing song. Rose of Sharon is beautifully brutal. Breathe Life was the second song I listened to by them, and that song was just amazing. And then you have As Daylight Dies. Man, that's the album that This Fire came in on, and which when I heard End of Heartache, that had already been past that point of no return. Like by the time I listened to End of Heartache, As Daylight Dies was already out, I believe. So I might have got that confused. It's been almost 20 years. Nonetheless, the End of Heartache was the first full album that I listened to by Killswitch, and I fell in love with it. Now, I will have to say this. When it comes to Killswitch, it's very interesting how they kind of changed my perception of metal music. Because up until that point, I was listening to more metal music. I was mostly into Metallica. I was into the glam stuff. I never really was listening to a lot of screaming in my metal, guttural vocals. And I have to admit, it was a bit of an adjustment when I was listening to that album, because there's a lot of songs that Howard just rips into gutturally, like Declaration. And him and Adam D, they're screaming, and they're different styles of the screaming vocals. At first it was a little jarring. I was kind of scared by it. I wasn't prepared for it because I didn't really listen to that. But that opened the gateway for me to listen to other bands that did that. So I always appreciate Killswitch Engage for doing that, and it made me love it. And I also think Howard Jones is at the top of the mountain. If he's not at the very top, he's right underneath of like greatest metal vocalists of all time. Not just because of his screaming. I prefer some of the cuts of their tracks like End of Heartache that are the clean audio version where he's not screaming, because his operatic voice is just chef's kiss. I mean, I don't think anybody really can compete with that. And at the same time, Bullet for My Valentine was right there along with them. I mean, those are two metalcore, like the two best metalcore bands in my opinion, bar none. I know other people might have a differing opinion. That's totally fine. See, I first heard the name Bullet for My Valentine, I think my freshman year of high school. A couple of kids were wearing those hoodies and talking about them. And at first I thought they were like an emo band, which nothing wrong with emo music. That just wasn't my style at the time. And I completely skipped the Poison album. Didn't even know about it. And then when I was hanging out at my drummer's house, we were doing a band practice. He's got a new album called Scream Aim Fire by Bullet for My Valentine. And he played it to me. And I loved it. Scream Aim Fire was that first do, like that just, that got me hooked. And so much so that I loved that album because it reminded me of a lot of like a contemporary thrash, a modern thrash. It gave me vibes of Metallica. So when I went back and I actually went to the mall and I bought the Poison album, when I realized, oh, that came first. And then that album was just unbelievable. I mean, All These Things I Hate, Tears Don't Fall, oh my, Room 409, that's an underrated song. 10 Years Today, these songs were peak. And then Screaming Fire, Hearts Burst into Fire, beautiful song. Forever and Always is a beautiful song. Waking the Demon, holy crap, talk about a punch to the dick. What a hell of a ride. Eye of the Storm, that's an okay song. Say Goodnight, these songs were great. And then we go to the next album. Was it Fever? I think Fever is the name of the album, right? Yeah, Fever. That album is so awesome because like Matt Tugg's vocals are just so off the chart in that album. I remember I think I was going through not a breakup. I was going through like a heartache because a girl rejected me or something. But during that time I was listening to that music a lot, and like, oh man, a lot of those songs just Place Where I Belong, man. That song still hits me. Bittersweet Memories is such a great song. And I was bonding with that music with my buddies. We all loved that song, those songs. And I have to admit, we got to what was the next album after Fever? So like when we got to Temper, I listened to it a little bit. And then for whatever reason, I just kind of fell off. I didn't really listen to a lot of new music. So I didn't really go off anymore in the era of For My Valentine. I listened to some of their songs here and there. Like I love Knives. I think Knives is a kick-ass song. But my core memory and what I always go back to is the Poison to a little bit of Temper. And that's the same way with Killswitch. The self-titled album, the one that had Reckoning on it, the one that was post Daylight Dies, I like a little bit of that. It's not my favorite, but my core memories are Daylight Dies and End of Heartache. So you take those two albums plus the four I mentioned. So just knock off Temper. So if you got the Poison, Screaming Fire, and then Fever, and then the Killswitch Engage albums, End of Heartache and Daylight Dies, those 5 albums are some of my favorite pieces of music ever. So that's why I hold these 4 bands in such high regards as my pillars, because they got me through a lot of my emotional times in high school. And when I think back on those days in high school and reminisce, I'm going back, it doesn't take much. All it takes is listening to some of those songs and it just pulls me back in. But enough about me gushing. Let me know, guys, what are your 4 pillars? It doesn't even have to be 4. It could be any other arbitrary number. But let me know what metal bands really just affected your life and are sentimental to you. Just let me know that, and I want to hear it, and just let me know in the comments. So, as always, guys, this is Aaron, the Stud Muffin Supreme, and I'll see you later.